Well, the trend that we're talking about is the convergence of data and process analytics. Essentially, it's the ability of a business to take advantage of the data available and the information they have about their own business processes to differentiate the way they go to market and drive competitive advantage. There are four key drivers here. First is speed, and it's not so much a question of being able to take a batch process that we used to do once a month and do it overnight. It's the fact that the ability to, in many cases, do things in real time or near real time lets us change the applications we can think about. Secondly, the actions that we have available in response to an analysis. There are many more fine-grained things that we can do, whether it's about reaching people or optimizing a supply chain. There's just more reasons to do an analysis. Thirdly, the scale of the data available, where we used to think about data warehouses in terms of megabytes or gigabytes. Now people talk about terabytes, petabytes, and you're even starting to hear about exabytes from time to time. And lastly, it's the nature of the data itself. Over the last dozen years or so, you've seen arguably a critical mass around four key classes of data. So first, think about business process data. The fact that the ERP systems we've been deploying over the last 10 years or so are providing newfound visibility into the workings of an organization, into the business processes themselves, and making them subject to analysis. And secondly, again, if you think about people, personal data, there's a lot more information that we can think about people and their activities, whether we're talking about them as students, as customers, as patients, as employees. A lot more of people's lives have become visible and subject to analysis and enabling potentially a broad class of services. Thirdly, physical data from physical sensors. So if you think about going back 10, 15 years or so, most of the applications that we can think of and discuss would have relied on information provided directly by people, basically provided through data entry. And now, because of the proliferation of sensors into the environment, whether we're talking about cameras or RFID tags or any of a number of different sensors, one dramatic change is that more and more of the world is directly physically observable by our computer systems. And lastly, unstructured content. Right? So in some ways this is the most obvious one, but easiest to overlook. There has been just a dramatic increase in the amount of unstructured content, for example, natural language or images, video available on the internet. Yet most of our investments continue to be in data warehousing for traditional sources of data. Well, one of the interesting wildcards potentially is on the semantic integration side. So one of the big efforts right now is around representation of data, of information. And there have been attempts to do this for decades. People have proposed formal representation schemes. For the most part, these efforts have fallen short because the emphasis, in my view, has been purely on or largely on the representational scheme that would be used, rather than somebody sitting down and creating representations. We're starting to see a little bit of a shift, which provides some reason for optimism, where now people are actually sitting down and representing domains, and we can start thinking about interoperability a little bit differently, and the ability to start thinking about systems that can reason about representations that have been generated. Well, if you think ahead about how this might play out, one of the things that we're really going for here is a notion of scalable intelligence. It's always been a dream to build systems that can reproduce and mimic human intelligence, but from a business perspective, we have humans. What we ought to be focused on, and I think what we're starting to see a focus on, is not so much replicating human intelligence, but complementing human intelligence by tackling the problems that are so difficult for people. And that means addressing reasoning at scale, or thinking at the scale of the data that we have available. There's no one person who can look across all of the data that's available to the enterprise, but we can start thinking about systems that can. And so if you look out 5 years, 10 years, I think that what we're heading towards is a scaled intelligence and building capabilities around scalable intelligence. In the end, what we're talking about here is how are businesses going to differentiate themselves and compete on their ability to take advantage of all of this data that's become available? What are the new applications? How are they going to improve their supply chains or radically change the way they deal with their customers or their employees? How is the visibility into their processes going to change the way they think about those processes and work on those processes going forward? These are both the challenges and the opportunities presented by these capabilities.